Hello and welcome back to Harmonix Tuning. In today's video, you guys are going to see a very different kind of a build compared to what you guys are usually accustomed to seeing on a YouTube channel. So over the last few years, we have got over 1,000 calls from potential customers as well as existing customers asking us to tune their cars with naturally aspirated engines. However, we have discouraged them from tuning their cars because we have in the past tuned a lot of these small capacity naturally aspirated engines and found little to no gains. Because we have an in-house dyno and also we pride on the fact of being transparent, we didn't want to burn our customers' money on mods that we think were not worth it. However, since the launch of the Suzuki Jimny, a lot of our existing customers and potential customers wanted to see what kind of gains we can eke out on this engine. So that is what we are going to be showcasing in today's video. So behind me is a 2024 Suzuki Jimny with the K15 engine that has an automatic transmission. So now let's take you guys through the entire process of how we are going to tune this car and show you guys if it's worth it to tune a Jimny or not. So the Jimny is strapped to the dyno. Now let's show you guys a procedure on how to dyno these cars. So typically in majority of the other cars, what happens is we just turn off the traction control button completely and that should basically put the car into a mode where we can dyno the cars safely. However, in case of the Jimny, because the rear wheels are running on the roller and the front wheels are stationary, even after turning off the traction control system, it will not allow us to dyno the car. Now let's show you that video heads on. So that's me turning off the traction control system. So you can see that the traction control light is on. Now let's put the car in drive and basically try to do a dyno run. So you can see the car is not really happy. It kicks in the traction control system over there and you hear all kinds of weird sounds and jerk from the car. So there's a workaround to this. So now let's show you guys how to do that workaround so that we can get the car to dyno without any issues. So since the car is not really happy trying to get dynoed with the traction control system off, so the workaround to that is to basically disable the ABS sensor. So once we unplug the ABS sensor, then it will trigger a set of faults that will allow us to dyno the car. However, removing the ABS sensor is a cumbersome process. So what we are going to do instead is we are going to pull out the ABS fuses in the fuse box over here. So there are basically two ABS fuses in the fuse box over here. So this 40 ampere one is a ABS fuse and this 25 ampere one is a ABS fuse as well. So now we are going to remove both the fuses and basically then start to dyno the car. Okay, now let's start the car and show you guys a bunch of codes that will trigger because we pulled out the ABS fuses. So as you can see, we have a range of DTCs that have shown up on the dashboard. So this check engine light is basically showing up because of the ECU not able to recognize the wheel speed sensor. So in the Polos and all, typically when we run the car on the dyno, you do get a check engine light. However, when we scan for the codes and delete them, the check engine light goes away. However, in the Jimny, we have tried scanning for the codes and even if we clear the codes, the check engine light doesn't go away. Now, we don't know what the repercussions are of having this check engine light running to the performance of the car. So let's dyno the car and see what it does and then we will take you guys through the entire process step by step. So let's start dyno testing the car. So first we are going to dyno test it in basically D mode. Now since the car does not have a manual stick where we can shift it to gear 3, D3 or D4. So if you notice, I will just let the car shift a few gears for the time being. So that is one shift. That is another shift. So we literally have no idea what gear the car is in other than the fact that we are noticing the shift happen manually on the tachometer. Now let me bring the car to about 1500 RPM. And the throttle is very sensitive on this engine. So now if I just put my foot down in D mode, let's see what happens. As you can see, the car is continuously shifting gears. So this is a huge problem while we are trying to dyno test automatic transmission cars, especially torque converters. So when the torque converter is not locked, when we go down on the throttle pedal, basically the car downshifts or upshifts depending on its mood. So one way to dyno the car without having this issue is to basically put it into a manual mode, and on this particular car that is called as number 2. So let's shift into D2. So there we have put it into second gear. So even here when we start running the car will upshift once. Okay, so there is the upshift. So now the car is possibly in second gear, or at least that's what we assume. So now let's begin dyno testing the car. Okay, so we're at about 1500 RPM in what we think is second gear. So now let's ease into the throttle, because if I go full flat into the throttle, it is going to basically downshift a gear. So let's ease into the throttle a little until it hits about 3000 RPM, and then we'll go wide open throttle. There you go. So the car downshifted over there. So I need to go a little more easy on the throttle. So let's try that again. So this is a huge issue when we are trying to, dyno test automatic transmission cars, especially the torque converters. So let's ease in now. Now it downshifted again. A little more easier on the throttle. Okay, here we go, the third time. There we go. So yeah, we are done dyno testing the car in completely bone stock form, and the car made 85 PS and 134.73 Newton meters of torque. So Suzuki claims 105 PS and 134 Nm. However, we are about 20 horsepower short on the horsepower. However, the torque claims seem to be pretty much on par. Now, we are not sure if the 20 horsepower less is because the ECU has triggered a check engine light because of the wheel speed sensors being taken off, and if that is why the ECU is cutting down power. But in any case, now that we have a baseline number, let's remove the ECU, let's put our stage 1 flash on it, and then remeasure again and see what it does. This is the Bosch ECU that comes in the Jimny. So the ECU is basically codenamed ME17.9.64. So we removed the ECU as these cars cannot be tuned via OBD, so we had to bench flash it. So basically in bench flash, what we do is we put our wires to all of the connectors here based on the schematics, and then we flash a map. So we've already finished flashing a stage 1 tune. So now we're going to put the ECU back in the car and then dyno the car once again to see what it makes post the stage 1 tune. Let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that it makes some decent gains. Plugs are connected properly. Okay, now all that is left to do is connect the battery and let's start dyno testing the car. So there you go, we've finished tuning the Jimny. I understand that some of you watching the video might have a few doubts, and we wanted to take some time to clarify those. So the first question anyone would ask is, why did the stock car make only 85 horsepower? So according to us, there could be two reasons for that. So first thing is, when we took out the ABS fuse, it triggered a check engine light, and that check engine light wouldn't go away even when we cleared the codes. So typically we've seen this happen in the Volkswagen 1 liter TSI engines as well. So when there is a check engine light or an EPC light that is triggered because of the ABS errors, sometimes those cars drop performance as well. So that could be one reason. Unfortunately, in the case of the Jimny, we couldn't clear the EPC error or the check engine light, whereas in the Volkswagen group of cars, we are able to get rid of the check engine light and then continue the dyno testing. So the second reason could be altitude. So the air is the most dense at sea level. So as you climb higher in elevation, the air gets thinner and thinner. In case many of you are not aware, Bangalore is at a height of about 3000 feet or 900 meters above main sea level, which means the air in Bangalore is a lot thinner and less dense than when it is compared to the sea level. So at sea level, the cars would make a lot more power. However, when you come to a high altitude place like Bangalore or go even to a higher altitude place like Ooty, the engine performance continuously starts to drop. So that could be the second reason why the car showed such low numbers. However, what is important is the fact that when we tested the car on the stock map and on our map, basically it made a difference with the testing methods being the same. So initially we had mentioned that the car was in completely bone stock form, but one thing I missed out on letting you guys know is the fact that the car actually is running upgraded tires. So upgraded tires is not really an issue when we are measuring the car on our dyno, because we use something called as the coast down method. So because of the coast down method, what happens is our dyno basically compensates for the upgraded tires and basically shows the numbers accordingly. So to make sure that the huge tires on this particular car haven't caused any power loss, we'll try dyno testing another Jimny in completely bone stock form and maybe make a post about it on our Instagram page as well. So the other mod that this car had was actually a BMC filter that we realized only much later into, testing the car. So both the stock runs and the stage 1 runs were done with the BMC filter. So what we did later is we swapped the BMC filter with the OE paper filter in order to see if there were any gains on the BMC filter. So the BMC filter made about less than 1 horsepower in certain portions of the RPM. Maybe we'll throw up that dyno chart for you guys to see as well. So then what we did was we completely removed the filter itself to see if there's any restriction on the intake side. So when we did that, the car basically made the same horsepower as it would with the BMC filter. So I think intake upgrade on this might not make that much of a sense. But in any case, going forward, once we have a manual transmission car, which would be a lot easier to dyno test, so we might do some intake and exhaust mods as well, and then show you guys a comprehensive difference in the performance with, say, a stock car versus a stage 1 car versus a stage 1 with an upgraded intake, and then putting a full system exhaust and doing a stage 2 tune.
So let's take a look at the dyno charts. The black curve represents the stock curve of the Jimny, while the red curve represents our stage 1 ECU tune. The first thing you can see from the low end is that we were able to ease into the throttle a lot lower in the RPM range with our stage 1 ECU tune without the car aggressively downshifting, and that is why you see a huge difference in the low end. The stock car made 83.9 horsepower and 134.7 Nm, while our stage 1 ECU tune made 88.3 horsepower and 148.8 Nm. Now let's split the horsepower and the torque curves into 2 separate curves so you guys can see the difference more clearly across the entire rev range. At 4300 RPM, we made max gains of 5 plus horsepower and nearly 10 Nm. Similar gains continue all the way up to red line, so we've pretty much made decent gains all the way up to 6000 plus RPM. Overall, the low end torque has improved quite a bit as we managed to get a max gain of 18 Newton meters of torque. To be honest, these numbers are way higher than what we had initially anticipated from a naturally aspirated engine, and we are pretty happy with these results. We can't wait to get our hands on a manual Jimny and see how that would look, as a manual car would always give us the ability to go wide open throttle right from 1000 RPM without having to ease into the throttle like we would have to do on the torque converter cars.
So let's look at the gains we achieved on the Jimny with our stage 1 tune. So we made a peak gain of 5 horsepower and 14 Nm of torque, and a max gain of 6 horsepower and 18 Nm of torque. We believe that if this was a manual transmission car, we could have eked a little more power and torque, as dyno testing these automatic cars is quite cumbersome as they keep upshifting and downshifting depending on their mood. So this car is actually belongs to our videography team, and they're off to Goa tomorrow to shoot the Rainforest Challenge. So the owner of this car has actually taken the car to Spiti. So we are waiting for his detailed feedback now that we have tuned the car once they come back from Goa. And hopefully we will make an interview with the owner of the car as well to understand what he felt of the tune as well. We hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Now that you've seen the entire gains on this Jimny, let us know what you guys think of tuning a naturally aspirated engine. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Drop your views in the comment section below. This is Rahul on behalf of Harmonix Tuning, signing off.